Story 1. After my mom died, I set a single goal to do something productive each day. For a while, it was getting out of bed. Then it was brushing my hair. Then it was cooking something to eat. As each little thing graduated from my task for the day to just habit, I would add a new thing. Took a while to be functional again. It really did feel like I was crawling when everyone else was running. Story 2. This is going to sound stupid to most who haven't been through it, but my ex-husband of 17 years cheated on me with my best friend. It's all so cliché. We had 2 preteen boys that he didn't want anything to do with. Somehow, I kicked him out of the house, didn't accept his fake apologies, and then watched my run turn into a walk, then a crawl. I dragged us through every day. It happened during the last 2 weeks of school, and I still went to their end-of-the-year award programs and smiled, even though neighbors were whispering. I hosted birthday parties minus a parent, and I taught one to drive. I am not completely sure how I was strong enough, but I brought us all forward in those dark days. I wasn't going to let this affect them. And now, even with their dad living 3 miles away with his new family and acting like they don't exist, I crawl with them on my back. I really appreciate all the kindness. It's comforting to hear the positive thoughts, as it's often so isolating. I can't believe I received so many comments. I plan to read and respond to all. Oh, and the awards. Wow, never got one of those before. Story 3. My wife died in June 2015. I lost my job at that time because I was her in-home caretaker for 3 years due to her being in a persistent vegetative state. I became addicted to methamphetamines again after 22 years of sobriety. My service dog of 10 years died. I survived an attempted murder from 2 people with rebar and ended up with brain damage and a broken neck. I got evicted because I couldn't afford to live in our townhouse anymore. I walked away from 30 years of memories because I had nowhere to store anything. I spent 2.5 years homeless, living on the streets and in shelters. The majority of these events happened within 6 months. I finally received Social Security for schizoaffective disorder, which developed from drug use after my wife died. I eventually got a home again in September. The point is, I got through it all because I kept moving forward. Story 4. Graduated from high school in 2001, tried the 4-year university thing. I was really depressed and didn't go to class much because of it. After the first semester, I dropped out and enlisted. 3 years later, I was medically discharged. Worked multiple difficult jobs while attending community college. Found a somewhat decent job while nearing the completion of my associate's degree. Then the recession happened. Finished my associate's degree while spending a year on unemployment. Unemployment ran out, and I decided to hold off on trying to transfer to finish my 4-year degree. Got a job at a gas station. A month later, promoted to assistant manager. 8 months later, I was store manager. A year later, left for a contractor position at a bank doing automated teller machine support. About a year later, I was hired on as an employee. 5.5 years later, I am in a new salaried role doing data analysis and finishing my degree. Story 5. This is extremely minor, but I completed a 5-kilometer race. I'm not a runner. In fact, I hate running. I have short legs and small feet. I'm slow and overweight. I did train, albeit not much. I started the race by running until I was out of breath, half a mile in. Then it was intermittent walking and running until the end. I was the second to last person to finish, but I didn't care. It was one of the best highs I've ever had. It felt good to accomplish something I always told myself I would do someday but never worked up the courage to try. I was proud of myself. So, rest in peace inbox. Thank you all for the comments, votes, and awards. This is pretty neat. Story 6. When I was 22, I lost my leg due to a suicide attempt, and becoming an amputee as a result of my own actions was extremely difficult. But I decided I was going to keep living and really see what I could do with the time and resources I have. I always thought I was too stupid and ugly to do anything with my life, but once there wasn't much left to lose, I got myself together, stopped being a victim, and now I'm 25, going to school, clean and sober. I don't have friends, a girlfriend, or family really, but I'm content being alone with my thoughts, and I think my prosthetic looks pretty impressive. Story 7. I rode my bike across the United States, most of it solo. In the middle of Missouri, I just had enough. I stopped on some guy's lawn and just cried. He came out and asked me what was up, and I explained how far I'd come, started in San Francisco, and that I was just done. He told me to ride into town, I think Springfield, which was only 10 miles away, and take a few days off and rest, which is what I did because, hey, one more day wouldn't matter. And the worst that would happen is that I'd pack it in and go home. Well, a day of rest seemed to be exactly what I needed. I spent a whole day, or most of it anyway, in blessed air conditioning, ate all the food, drank all the water, and was more or less ready to go again. I took a few more one-day breaks between Missouri and Williamsburg, Virginia, which really helped me out. So yeah, one step back, two steps forward. Story 8. Living to be honest. My parents never believed and still don't that depression is a real thing, so they never got me help when I was younger. I'm 30 now and still crawling on. Story 9. A while back, I was trying to make an application. Learning from scratch, it was hard to find time around work, friends, girlfriend, etc. But I had the mantra of, if I have only got 10 minutes, then do 10 minutes. The actual 10 minutes didn't achieve much, but it kept it in my mind, and when I had a spare couple of hours, I was in the mindset to do that couple of hours. Over the months, my project gradually grew and grew. Eventually, I got out of the habit, and the application got less and less attention, so it never got finished. I'm furloughed right now. Maybe it's a good time to get started again. Story 10. When I was quickly dipping into depression again about my relationship with my dad, it was terrible. It was slow to recover, and it was painful, but I didn't go back without moving forward afterwards. Story 11. Depression. Somehow, I keep right on enduring, and it's how I survive depression and suicidal ideation every year. Story 12. I don't know if this has been said before in this post, but there's a phrase that I constantly think of whenever I feel like I can't move forward. An arrow has to go back in order to move forward. Granted, I know this in Spanish and can't remember where I read it, but for whoever needs to read this, it's okay to step back and see where you are at in order to know what you want to aim at. Stay strong, fellow Redditors. Story 13. When I'm feeling really down or having a blood sugar episode where I can barely get out of bed and walk far enough to the bathroom, I start saying, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You have killed my father. Prepare-toi." Story 14. When my heavy wheelchair broke down right before my final architecture school assignment, I asked random strangers to take the freshly printed floor plans to the right classroom. Everyone was running to get their own things delivered in time, so I asked people to push me for 10 meters or so. The third person pushed me all the way through, and the plans got delivered in time. Thank you, kind strangers. Story 15. Drawing. After losing everything I ever drew in my life due to a poor moving company, I was devastated and didn't draw for a few years. Eventually, I got a whiteboard and said, I'll just do a simple little doodle once a week. Then it became once a day. They got more elaborate. Then 5 days ago, I picked up a sketchbook and pencil for the first time in years and said, just 10 minutes, a couple of days a week. I've ended up getting lost in it for a couple of hours already. And I can't describe the feeling of joy when I looked at the completed outline and thought, wow, it actually looks like the thing I'm drawing. I have barely begun shading, but I'm so excited to continue it tomorrow. Story 16. When I left my abusive ex-husband, he had maxed out my credit cards and spent all of the savings. Earlier, he prevented me from finishing my Bachelor of Science degree and from working. I had 2 toddlers and friends who were kind enough to share time watching the babies so I could work enough to get by. He stalked me and harassed me with threats daily. I also broke a tooth in half due to stress grinding and was hospitalized for a week for what should have been a minor illness. There were at least 5 times I could have easily died that year. I did some work from home and paid off enough of my credit line to charge tuition to it. I honestly thought it would kill me, but I finished a degree and kept my babies alive while well under the poverty line, with only some help from friends. Just enough childcare to cover, sometimes not enough, and I'd have to call in. Felt impossible. The only thing that got me through was telling myself that I could because I was already doing it, so I could keep on doing it, and the belief that eventually it would be better. We got through. I got a degree and a decent job, the kids are well. I bought a house. We've come so far in just a few years. It's amazing, really. Story 17. I was deep in depression for most of a year. No job, no friends, heartbroken. I had a roof over my head thanks to my parents, but nothing else besides. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and no resources to pursue it if I did. Something like finishing college or traveling the world or pursuing my artistic dreams or having a loving relationship was completely beyond my grasp. But one day I messaged an acquaintance, actually, the ex-girlfriend of a guy I knew, and I asked if she wanted to hang out. Eventually, that became a relationship. We got married, I started publishing books, we lived in Europe for a while. None of that was possible from the place I started in. But I dug myself out one small victory at a time. Life keeps changing. I'm divorced but in a much healthier and happier relationship, living far from where I'd ever been. I found another fulfilling career and lots of good friends. And I'll never fall into the place I was again because I have the memory of my own success. Once you can recall confidence, you can always use that as the first step to anything else. Story 18. Overcoming sex addiction. It caused the end of my relationship, and all I can do is keep pushing forward. If I stop the momentum, I will be stuck at square one in the pit of despair. I will do better every day from here on. Story 19. Could not become a veterinarian. Realized too late into my career that this was the career I wanted, and instead I adopted a ton of cats, volunteer at the zoo, and have recently applied to be a foster cat mom. Animals really give me joy. Story 20. Higher education. If I cannot get an A, get a B. If I cannot finish a paper, at least write 3/4 of it really well. And if I feel like giving up, just do one sentence at a time. So far it has worked. I have one semester left for my bachelor's. Then it is Harvard. Story 21. The one time I went to a sexual assault support group at the hospital following my overdose, which was a reaction to being raped, the therapist told me this exact quote. I was 18, and not one part of me wanted to be alive, and those few weeks were the hardest of my life, but those words stuck with me. I didn't really get out of bed much once home, but after a few days, I kept thinking about this and remember quite literally rolling out of bed and basically crawling to the bathroom to shower for the first time in a while. A very literal example, but I think of this quote a lot when times are tough. Sometimes you really just have to endure and crawl until you can continue on your path walking. Story 22. Sometimes it's just the dishes. You have to just roll up your sleeves and do it, even if you're tired and just want to watch Netflix and become one with the couch. Story 23. Pulling myself out of a mental health situation, hearing voices. I had full conversations every waking moment for about a year. Then one day, I woke up and said, screw this. This isn't normal. I got serious about fixing it, and I did it. Story 24. I was once a fully non-functional alcoholic. In and out of jail, losing jobs, almost died, the whole 9 yards. Now I'm a functioning alcoholic. I drink way too much, but I have a stable job, haven't been arrested in over 3 years, building credit, the whole other yard. So I have that going for me, which is nice. Story 25. My life was completely devastated by sexual violence in my teens. It took a while for it to sink in and for the effects to kick in. I had to drop out of university after nearly 3 years, completely depressed, and I gained a ton of weight on medication. I literally went from being a conventionally attractive girl to someone who was very overweight, although still, in my opinion, quite beautiful. I dropped out of university. I had a boyfriend, but most of my friends disappeared. I had a breakdown and spent a night in a psychiatric ward. I did everything I could to help myself after that. I got books on the internet that I knew could help me. I went to see a therapist. Twice a week. I got 2 buses and walked a long way to see the same therapist. I was huge from the medication and felt like such a failure, but I just kept on going. I got a part-time job, which really helped me with my emotional regulation. I saved up money to go and see my boyfriend. During the year, I applied for new courses at university. However, in the ultimate act of humility, I ended up continuing the same degree at a much lower-ranked university. I still had a good time. There, people didn't think much of me. I was overweight and still quite emotionally unstable. I was having symptoms from the trauma that affected me in a really bad public way. But I knew I was going somewhere. I kept my head down and ran. Through all the humiliation and some bullying, I completed my degree, even though my concentration was so bad from the trauma that I had to work all night every night and had no social life whatsoever. I went to more therapy, and when it went south, I went to more. I finished that degree seemingly unable to live alone. However, I found the subject I was truly passionate about, and this motivated me to persevere. Instead of moving back home, I proceeded to do 2 master's degrees. And by the way, I continued to have many public and humiliating symptoms, and I nearly got kicked out of university a couple of times because they didn't like it and refused to understand, but I kept on going. 5 years after dropping out, I have 2 Master of Science degrees. I just landed my first job after 132 applications. I continued to attend therapy throughout the 2 masters, and I am doing much better. I'm still a bit curvy, but really, there are worse things in life and it's kind of adorable. Getting over sexual trauma is one of the hardest things you can ever do, especially if it happened to you as a child. To have overcome this while persevering with my studies to such a high degree is to me to have continued moving forward. Thank you for the awards, everyone.